Thanks for listening to Fluff and Crunch, where we talk about system, setting, and story in tabletop RPGs and share our experience to hopefully help you have your best game. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm pretty well. Super hungry, so I'm eating a peanut butter and jelly. Is it a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or just a peanut butter sorry sandwich? That's what I'm having right now.
Hey, you can eat it. That's what matters when you're hungry.
All right. It's going to be a little while before we have dinner, so you built a closet this week. That's exciting.
I finished a closet. It's taken 3 different weekends to get it completely done, but we went from literally just a wall with the 2x4s and the wall of the bathroom to cutting out the door, then putting up the drywall, and then putting in the door, and then painting and everything. And it's now done, and the bedroom's put back together. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so we're not going to share all the great details of why no, maybe we can. I don't know. Whatever. Cool.
I'm
family
about to have
stuff.
both your daughters in one house.
That's
it
right.
is.
That's right. You're both my daughters. Yes. Good luck in one house. Your wife and your sister-in-law for a period of time, and all kinds of good stuff. Yeah. Well, I just want to see the look on her face when it hits like 7, and she has to go outside. That's just what I want to see.
Well, I know that Michaela will be taking her with her to work, so she will have to go outside when it's 7 degrees.
Outside. Well, we got her boots.
It will happen.
We got her boots. So,
Good.
All right. Well, cool. So then, and you'll be here in a couple of days, which is delightful. And we talked a couple weeks ago about you talking about Traveler one-on-one. Did you do it?
Yes, we actually just finished our first kind of mini adventure that we did that I wrote, because I did this before I had any of the resources that I now have. So it's the first time I've ever done an adventure that I actually wrote myself. So
wait, period or for Traveler?
I guess technically I did one shot for Conan that I wrote myself, but other than that, this is the only thing I've ever run that I wrote myself,
including D&D.
Correct.
Wow. Okay, that's kind of cool, because I would think at least that the vast majority of people, since D&D is the elephant in the room of RPGs and everything else is like a cricket by comparison, that you would have done that but Traveler then has a special honor. That's pretty cool.
I have never GM'd for D&D. I have only ever played with D&D. So everything I've ever been the person actually running the game has been non-D&D materials. So it was a lot of fun, but it's also kind of funny because I'm the person that's tried 3 or 4 different systems, and then everyone else runs the same thing. So
that's a mark of distinction as far as I'm concerned. And not as a dig. Me taking digs at D&D is such a low-hanging fruit. And I'm talking about modern D&D. But I really do think that is a mark of distinction, because there are so many great games out there, as you are discovering. So let's talk about this funky Traveler that campaign-ish that you're running. Tell me about how did this come into being, and what is it like story-wise? And then I want to talk about the complexity or how you've gotten over the hurdle of running this for one person, not only story-wise, but mechanically. So set the stage, and what's going on with this?
Yeah, so the way that this happened was a friend of mine was running a solo D&D campaign for me, and we hit a point where we had caught up to his writing, and he needed a break. And I went, I will run Traveler, because I have just learned about this system, and I really enjoy it. Let's do that. So I started doing Traveler for a group, and also this solo campaign kind of at the same time. And funnily enough, the solo campaign has now been the much more consistent of the two. But the whole gist of the story was we rolled up characters and kind of allowed the characters to determine what the campaign was going to look like.
How many characters? Because you have one player. Now, the advantage that you have here is that this one, and this is something maybe we should drag him on the show at some point to talk about his wackadoo world. But I know that you've been playing in his solo D&D campaign for a long time. It's completely homebrew, world creation, the whole nine. And like you said, he is very into writing for it. So he has to create it so that he can then create stories within it. So you already have a long history with him of running this kind of atypical game. So that gives you an advantage to onboard. But you say characters, how many?
So originally we were contemplating kind of doing it the same way that my solo campaign had started, where it would be one character and then we would introduce NPCs that would then come into the story and become like extra characters to make a party. But we made the first character, and with Traveler's wonderful character creation rules, he made a contact in this backstory creation, and he went, I really like the idea of this contact that we made. Can I roll this as a character? And I went, of course. So we rolled up this other backstory with this character. Well, that character ended up rolling exceptionally well on everything. And we ended up making the character a little bit older than the original character. And she ended up being an admiral, like the lowest rank of admiral in the Navy that you could be. And the way that they met, where both characters were in the Navy. Well, that character then had other connections that it made in their backstory. So he wrote up those two characters. Well, now we're sitting there with four different characters, and he went, instead of making NPCs, can I just have these four characters as my party of travelers? And he goes, I'm used to running tons of NPCs because I've been a GM for over a decade. Can I just play these four characters? And I went, absolutely. So that's kind of how the characters came to be. Was it was just we were making one character, and then based off of Traveler creation, we ended up with four, and they really fit all the pieces we need. It really just worked out well for all of these characters.
That is really clever. What a simple way to take advantage of something that the game just puts in front of you already. And I love that. I mean, actually, you could that approach could be used in any game that has some kind of character creation system that creates a backstory or a life path. We were just puttering around this last weekend we spent about 15 or 20 minutes before finishing up our Star Trek game. My buddy John, who's going to run a month or so of Cyberpunk Red, just quickly had us roll, and he wrote down some stuff for Life Path, so he'd have some idea, and you could do that with that. You could do that with Star Trek Adventures. You could do a lot of different things. Okay, so he's got four characters. They're all connected through
Correct.
the
And that's where
creation
they're
system.
they're all connected because they all served in the Navy. Like that's just the way the roles ended up, that the majority of every character's terms were served in the Navy. So it made it really perfect to have this admiral character that was kind of the bridge between all of these characters, because it ended up she started as a pilot and then worked her way up through. His initial character ended up being an astrogator, and then the other two were a mechanic and a medic. So it ended up turning into this perfect party. It's three humans and an Aslan, so kind of like almost the stereotypical traveler party. If one of them was a Vargur, we'd have everything that you need for all of that. But it just worked out that that was the way it was going to be. So knowing this, I took all of this information and kind of the backstory that we built with these characters and decided I didn't know enough about the Traveler like universe generally to just kind of like, okay, go do whatever you want. So I made what I continue to call Baby's First System, where he kind of has this playground that he can use to learn the way the Traveler world works, and so can I, but it keeps it in one system instead of trying to jump all over the entire Traveler universe, which is huge. So, with that, how we made this happen is I turned this into a red zone system that exists.
And real
but
quick,
is
let
not.
people know this because
Yeah.
this is a wonderful thing. If you go look at Traveler Map, and I'll put a link in the notes to this, you can see some of the systems will have a little red circle around them. Some of them have a yellow, they're amber zone. What does that mean for people who don't know?
Yeah. So, for people who don't know, red means normal people don't go there. Like the military can show up sometimes depending on the situation and why, but no one goes into red zones. Amber zones, it's just highly advised that you don't, or there are certain parts of the system that you're not allowed to touch. Usually that's like there's a secret military installation on this planet. No one's allowed to go around that planet, but you're allowed into the system generally. So there are just different rules for those zones. And how I did this was it's a red zone, like it's a red system, but technically it's not on Imperial maps. Like they've removed it because it's so like dangerous that we're not letting anyone go there at all.
So you came up with your own. Did you come up with your own system? So if someone were to go to the traveler map and they would not find it, you just picked an empty hex and said, "That's where this system that's been erased from the Imperial census."
That is exactly
Smart.
what I did.
That's really
Yeah,
smart.
and I did that on purpose also because I didn't want him to go in and start like looking up lore of the planets and maps and different things because he like it's not a bad thing, but he's the kind of person that will do his homework because of all of his writing experience and his own world creation to make sure he understands what's going on. So by making it completely myself, he has to learn it just as much as his characters have to learn it as they're playing. So I did that. It ended up working out really well. It all makes really good sense once you kind of get into the way the system's set up, why it's this way. But the whole plot of the story is this admiral has retired from the Navy. She's kind of hit her cap that she's ever going to get in the Navy. So she's just like, I'm going to go out and try to find my fortune elsewhere. But she gets a letter saying, hey, there's this system. It's been removed from the maps. You would know about this because you're high ranking enough with your security clearance. Secretly, we want you to gather a party of people and go help push this system into unifying so it can become part of the Empire. Because there is one
Okay.
planet in the system that wants to join the Empire, but the other planets are very dangerous and are not going to allow that to happen.
Hip on being part of the
So,
Imperium. Okay. Okay.
exactly. So basically, she has this covert mission to go in and do this. None of the other characters know that. So it's one of those things where she's kind of, which he knows, but technically the characters in the party don't know that, which kind of makes for a fun storytelling aspect of we have this overarching mission, but it allows him to kind of like push and pull in this story that we're writing together because he loves doing that so much.
So what is the overarching mission that all four of the characters know? And that's interesting because like if you're the idea that obviously he knows it because he's the real person and they're not. That's a really fascinating way to cue up a a situation in which the two of you are trying to build a story. You're playing a game, but I think maybe more actually than if you had each of these characters played by a real person. Maybe more than that, you guys are using the game as a way to tell a story and create a story. So what's the overarching thing that they all know versus what only your player knows?
So the thing that they all know is that they've all retired from the Navy at different ages, and their admiral, the person that they all kind of served together on her flagship, have called them up and said, "Hey, you're all highly skilled individuals. I'm going to this system." They don't really know why she was going there. They just know that she's going. She's not technically like her family is Soleimani, so they're like, "Is this like political like issues? Is this what's the like?" No one knows why she retired, but she called them and said, "Hey, I have all this money for mustering out of the Navy. I'm offering you jobs to come work as my crew
Classic
in
Traveler
this
Hook.
system."
I'm offering you money and you need money.
Exactly. And they all went, "Well, we're getting out of the military. We'll join you because we trust you and you're willing to pay us decent amounts of money." So they followed her, and she has this secret mission of, hey, try to push the system into joining the Empire. So that was kind of the hook to get them into the system itself.
Now, you've got how many sessions of this have you played?
I think it's been 5 or 6 sessions, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay. Now, how are you handling? I mean, I guess you could just handle it as like you wouldn't actually have to change the rules at all. You wouldn't even have to consider it. You just have him run all four characters. And I would imagine that unless the characters are talking to NPCs, he doesn't do a lot of dialogue between the characters because that would be weird. I'm guessing that he narrates to you what they decide among themselves because all four of them are in his head. Is that is that correct?
That is correct, unless there are specific things that I'm asking individual characters.
Sure.
It's generally a like the group does this. And that's where the way that we kind of get around that narratively just for our own fun is all of these people have been working together in like our background at least 8 years. So it's kind of one of those things where
Yeah.
it's like, okay,
They know each other.
like, and yeah, some of them have been like 12 plus years of serving together. So they really just kind of like, she gives a nod and he knows what to do type situation. So that's how we've kind of narratively like cut back the inter-party conversations. But sometimes I do make him like, hey, how is this person responding? And then how does this person respond to
Right.
that response?
Right. But there
So,
isn't there
yeah.
the discussion, the intra-party discussion takes place primarily as narrative to you. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Correct.
Now, what
And
about oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and the Admiral has kind of become his de facto character. Like all of them are. It wasn't originally going to be that character, but because she's the one that makes most of the decisions,
That makes
he
sense.
just uses her as his kind of mouthpiece for this is what we want to do. And that generally just works.
So,
So
have you modified have you had to modify any of the rules, or can you just run it as is? Rules as written, that
we
is.
yeah, we can run it basically rules as written because I have the small craft catalog, which is all intersystem ships. So I've made sure to limit like his options for how he can travel around. And I built the planets out to the point where like we know how long it takes to get from planet to planet. So I've just built it to where we can run essentially exactly rules as written and be good to go.
Yeah, see, that's one thing that I've seen in supposed one to one or what, different people have used different names for it. And it's actually, it's funky. Now that I think about it, it seems to me that there are more solo RPGs, which sounds kind of depressing to me because of the lack of social interaction. Um, it seems like there are more of those than there are one player, one GM sorts of things. And all of those sorts of games that I've seen, the one on one, there's all kinds of rules mods. And I guess I had assumed going into this that well clearly you would have to because but actually you don't. I mean, especially given how simple Traveler is, I don't think there's a reason. Um okay.
And yeah, and I'll say both in the campaign that I'm currently running for him and in the one that he runs with me, in both cases, we neither one of us have really had to overwrite any of the rules in the game. So even for Dungeons and Dragons, the rules as written are what we use. He just sometimes has to build on top of because of certain aspects of the story. So like my character's decided to become a lord. There are parts of that are not in Dungeons and
Right.
Dragons like rules as written. So he has to come up with how to
Yeah.
do that.
Big deal.
And that's where for mine, it's like if we ever get to the point where like we're jumping out of this system and he gets into politics or whatever, I might have to come up with some things to help make that work. But as a baseline, we can use rules as written and then build on that if we need to. But we never have to change the base rules of what already exists
That's
in the
excellent.
game.
And so then you just have him. This makes sense. The idea that like, okay, there's a background that connects them all together. They've worked together. They know one another well. He can just describe what they're doing, and then as he needs to, he can roll for each of them when depending on which of the characters is in the spotlight at any given
Correct.
moment. But that the leader of the team would naturally, not all the time, but typically be the mouth of the team or the one who makes the final decision. So it's almost like you could assume he could say, "Well, hey, they're gonna spend some time hashing this out and planning it. They're looking over the map and figuring out what to do. She takes input from different ones, and this is the decision that's made." And that does it.
Yeah, and it also helps, as we say all the time with Traveler, that all of these people are expected to be professionals. So
Right.
like
And competent.
exactly. So when someone lays out a plan, like they lay out, here's all the facts, they should all, in theory, come to the same professional, competent opinion of it's this thing, or maybe there are two things to decide between. But in the way we set it up with the expectation of a military type command structure, people are just used to, okay, here are the two options. the person in charge makes the decision, and that's what we're following. So it works out really well.
So okay, this all makes sense. I mean, I think that anyone could sit down with the Traveler rules and do this. What's going on in the story so far? How has this
Yeah,
been working out?
so
Has anything unexpected come up that's in terms of just running it with one player, or not? But what's happened in your several sessions so far?
first session was really simple because it was the shopping session. They had to buy their ship and all their different supplies because Traveler is an equipment-based game. So that was really the first thing. Then after that, they did the quintessential adventure story of we go to the bar to see if there's work, which they found, which was great, which I planned, of course, but I gave him multiple options to pick for the party. Like, well, would you rather start like trading? Would you rather do this? Would you rather do that? And he's the one that went like, well, is there a bar we can go to? And like, I'm like, sure, you can go there. And what they did is they found a just classic Traveler. Hey, there's this guy that needs to get from this planet to this planet, and he's willing to hire a ship to do it. And that's what basically they got hired by this guy. And he's like, if you will fly me from this high port to this low port, I will pay you significant amounts of money for that. So, with some narrative things in between, they did so, got him to this planet, got him to the low port, and he's like, hey, if you're willing to come with me to my house, I'll give you a meal. You'll be able to kind of explore the planet, see what you want. But I'm really happy that this went well. Let me take you there. So they got into their car, and I had planned this that they had he has an air raft, and one of his players rolled to inspect the air raft because they're like, this has been really smooth. He wouldn't have hired travelers if there wasn't something weird going on. And his mechanic found a bomb underneath this guy's car, and they're like, why is someone trying to car bomb you? And he goes, I have no idea. Let's get back to my house, and I will take you to my boss in the morning, and she will probably be able to give you a better idea. Well, at his house, he does what he promises and is going to let them stay there and have a meal. And the power gets cut in the house, and a wet team breaks in, and the travelers now have to deal with this wet team coming in to try to. They don't know if they're trying to capture this guy, they're trying to kill this guy, what the plan is, but there's this group of mercenaries that they now have to deal with. So those were our first two sessions. Getting into it was this was kind of the intro into, okay, now you have some combat. And which, as you said the first time I told you about this, was essentially these people just work so well without talking to each other because one person is running
Right.
all four players. But it worked really well. It was fun because it did get to show off, like, oh, these are competent professionals, but also it introduced how deadly the Traveler universe can be to people who are not
Sure.
prepared. Because he managed to kill one of these mercenaries in a singular round of shooting and was like, "Oh, guns are dangerous. We should be really careful about engaging with people with guns." So it ended up working really well. They saved the guy. All the things they planned, they're like, "Hey, we're going to take you to your boss, figure out what's going on." So they get there, find out this guy is a diplomat, and that's why they were going to do something with him. And he introduced them to his boss, who actually kind of runs the planetary, like, because this government is like a planetary, like, unifying government that she works for. And she's like, yeah, I'm essentially the leader of the CIA here on the planet. He doesn't know that. He just kind of does the things I tell him to. But you've made it to the big leagues around here now, and I have a job for you. And they went, okay, what's the job? And she goes, I want you to go clear out this terrorist cell in this city. And so that was the whole thing. Yeah.
So you didn't jump right into the what you were talking about, the is this already in this system that you've created? Okay, so they're
Yes.
already there operating, and now they're just moving through, and then that gives them an opportunity, him, your
Right.
player, an opportunity to learn about this area that you've created, but also it gives you the opportunity to create the area and be a few steps
Exactly.
ahead of him, and you are responding to his responses to the story, which helps you shape what you're building. That's cool.
And it also worked out really well because his character has this like goal to push for the unification of the system so they can join the empire. The planet that they're on is the one that's pushing for unification. So he naturally went, well, if I help this government who's trying to unify, I will be helping push for the end goal that we want to do for this. So it worked out really well. So now he's employed by this government to go take out this terrorist cell who's been causing issues in one of these cities. And he shows up, and I basically give him this fun, like, CIA experience of the goal is to capture these three main people and do as much damage to the cell as possible. If that's just like completely wipe them out, stop them from being an issue, great. If not, like taking these three key people, that will be enough for us to get what we need and move on. So then all of the other sessions were him capturing these key people and dismantling this terrorist cell as they go through.
Yeah, so have you run into, I mean, it sounds like it's gone smoothly. Like story wise, it sounds like classic traveler stuff. You know, yes, there's the space trucker aspect of traveler and the idea that it might seem from the outside like, wait, I'm going to play this science fiction game in which I just engage in mundane jobs to make money. No, 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 no. That's what it seems like. But once you scrape the surface a little bit, travelers with the two L's are always getting involved in stuff. That's the point. Like
Yes.
it might seem like you're just a space trucker, you're just a retired Marine or a former scout or whatever. But because of your connections and because you have this gumption to go travel, you're going to get involved in non-mundane things. That all sounds terrific. And the idea too of, I mean, Traveler can be overwhelming. And when you look at the Traveler map, a lot of people look at it and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so great!" And then when you start thinking about, okay, what do I actually do with this? It can be overwhelming because the world is so big. But but you realize you're never playing the whole thing. You have to carve out a little niche, and as you're learning it, carving out, creating your own niche that sits within it. That's very clever. Have you run into any hitches? Has there been anything with just having one player? Obviously, you said it earlier. It's a terrific advantage having one player because it would be easier to schedule. Um, you don't have to harmonize. You only have to harmonize his schedule with yours. Any unexpected problems or issues, challenges?
We haven't had any issues with the one GM, one player aspect just because this is our fourth year of doing this.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah. So you two already have, regardless of the game.
right.
Okay.
We already kind of have that taken care of. I've run into the issue with Traveler of I've allowed, because of the situation of the story, he's working for a planetary government. I've allowed him to get a little too technologically advanced a little too quickly, which is making it hard to write stories because it's like, hey, when you have government resources in Traveler, that can lead to problems if you're not running like a true like military or government espionage based
Yeah, you have better
campaign.
stuff and better connections than everybody else.
Correct. And it's like,
That's always a tough thing is when if you
yeah.
dial up the player power, if you ramp that up too quickly, it can write you into a corner as a GM.
And that's where I've kind of like run into is I gave this government TL13 equipment. Well, he's like, well, I'm now working for the government. The government can give me TL13 equipment. And I said, yeah, of course. And basically he's like, okay, so my characters now have Gauss rifles and laser pistols and all of, I'm like, technically I can't say no to that because I had not thought of a way to do that at the time because I was new. It's actually not worked out very poorly because, they're on a planet with law levels and those things are not allowed. So the law level has helped with that. It just means he has to be much more careful about doing things out in the open because there are only so many people that will have access to those things and could lead to many problems for him. But he's an intelligent person and an intelligent player and therefore does those things. So I kind of have to then plan around the fact of, hey, he has access to these tools that normally players would not have access to very quickly. And so I'm having to kind of build around that, but it hasn't been too much of an issue because it's a solo game
Good.
and we're moving through things relatively quickly. It's taking us so long to get to this point just because of schedules, and we started doing this not too long before the holidays. So he's already caught up with his stuff, and he's like, well, I really want to get back into running the campaign we were doing before. And that's what I'm like, well, can we at least get to this point? And he's like, oh, of course we can. He's like, it would be terrible for me to be like, no, let's just stop here. So now I've kind of we finished this adventure of, hey, let's take out this terror cell. It taught both of us how Traveler works really well. And so now what I'm doing is we're running this into the Death Station adventure. And that's how I'm going to open
Okay.
kind of Traveler up to him going forward. And that can be like we keep playing for a little bit, or we take a break, go back to D&D, and then come back to Traveler later, because he'll have the resources that come at the end of a modified version of Death Station. So,
And then that introduces you like that would be the on ramp to the greater Traveler universe. The nice thing
correct.
too is that at that point, you've had an opportunity to read more and more and more about all this stuff. And then the neat thing too, because it's so easy to control the storytelling because you are agreeing, you're working with one another. You could shelve this for a period of time and then come back to it and say, okay, it's 3 years later. What cool things would have had, like, you could throw something at him and say, this is where your group is 3 years later. What cool things, what interesting things, what difficult things would have gone on and led from where we left off to where we're starting, and then you can start up again. You have that freedom. You're not just because you have one person, then you don't have to, such and such won't like that, and I have to deal. That's I think that's clever.
Yeah, it's also great because at any point, if we want, like, one of us comes up with an idea, it makes it really easy to be like, hey, like, he is wanting to go back to this, but we've also talked about taking a break from the standard D&D that we've been doing and doing a different one in his world, because he's like, hey, there's this whole continent I built on this D&D world that I've never actually had anyone play in. And I'm like, dude, if you want to take a break
Yeah,
from both of these campaigns and hop in there, because
that's cool.
when he has a player play in that area, it's a lot easier to then like write history and
Oh,
backstory and
sure,
different things
because it's
for it.
pushing back. Someone's pushing at your story, and that inspires you and fuels you to come up with things. Yeah. That's one of the
So
reasons I
I
have such a horrible time. At least I don't enjoy writing adventures to be published because you're writing for GMs and players you'll never know, and you don't know like how are they going to react to this. So what should the next scene be? And then it's almost impossible not to make a railroad. Yeah, the creative fuel comes when players do unexpected things.
right, and that's where so we've contemplated that. I kickstarted Cohorts Cthulhu from Modifius, which we both are Roman history like junkies. So that's something that we've been kicking around like, hey, let's play in cohorts because we both like 2d20. We both know how the system works. We both know Rome. So this would be great. So there's just so many different things that we kind of jump back and forth between. But because it is just two people planning and scheduling and writing, it allows us to do that so much more that it makes our lives a lot easier to be able to kind of like bounce back and forth between him GMing and me GMing, and then the like actual worlds we're using or the systems we're using or however we want to build it. It makes it really easy for us to do that.
It's really cool. I hope that folks listening, you take from this the possibility or the realization that it is entirely possible to run a one-on-one game without cumbersome rules modifications. And that there are some terrific advantages to the storytelling side of it because I do think you probably are playing the game less and using the game more to provide some kind of structure to you two creatively coming up with this story. I think that's really cool. And I mean, I think that the most people who end up playing these games, at least a piece of it is I have this creative urge to come up with stories either that are based around characters or based around places and worlds and themes. And this would be a terrific opportunity to scratch that itch.
Well, and we both love one of the things that we started with the very first solo campaign we did was we recorded our sessions. And that has been so much fun because you record the session and then you get to a point and you're like, I remember this thing happening. My character would know that. And that be it's important like exposition in the story as we're telling it. It's like the character would know that, but it's been 2 years, and I, as the player, don't remember, even though it's only been 6 months for them. So then we go back and we listen to the recording, which then spurs us that we're like, what if we write this into something, or what if we do something with this?
Yeah.
Because it's so
What
much
if?
fun that we've done this, and it really does narrate like a story that you're listening to on like a podcast or something like that, or an like an audio book. Because then you're sitting through and you're like, oh, I remember that thing and the story going this way, and it makes it a lot of fun. But when it's just the two people, it's really cool because then you can sit down and do that, and it moves both faster than a traditional campaign, but also in a way is slower in all the ways that you want, because you can be so focused as a GM and as a player that it's like I can sit down, and I know this more from a player side, but I'm learning it as the GM side too. I can really sit down and go like, this is the thing I want to focus on as a player. So can we focus on that? And it makes it really easy for him, because then he just preps all the writing for it. And that's the way it's working now with me as GM, is he's like, hey, I really feel my character's going this direction. Can you write more? And I'm like, of course. So then I just plan around that. And it makes it a lot of fun because it is so much more story driven, because there's no like discord between players and GM, because you're not trying to chase the cats that you have when you have 5 or 6 different people.
Yeah. It's easier to stay on the same page when the two people and you were already good friends and you have a history. Well, that's really cool. Actually, that kind of that inspires me. Maybe I've got some things rolling around in my head. I won't jump into right now, but it's making me think about a possibility on my end for that. But that's really cool. I'm glad that you took the chance and dove into something new, and now you have this opportunity to learn about this new property and share it with someone else, and then build your own piece of it. That's terrific.
Yeah, and that's where I would say to anyone who wants to get into Traveler, if you want to build your own system instead of using the overwhelming map, which I really actually love the Traveler map, but it is overwhelming when you're trying to run it for the very first time. That's why I would suggest starting with a written adventure for your very first thing ever if you're going to do that. But it is so much fun to go and just like build the planets and then try to figure out why they are the way they are. So like you roll up your information and you're like, okay, like one of my planets, it has this insidious atmosphere. How did that happen? Oh, well, like there was a nuclear war on this planet. Why did that happen? Let's write that up. And it is so much fun compared to like all the things that I've tried to do for fantasy writing for a world is really hard, because it's either like I can't come up with anything just new like very well for that. I'm just not very good at it. Or it just ends up being Tolkien. And I'm like, I don't want to just copy Tolkien. That's no fun for anybody. With Traveler, it's so easy because I was worried it's like, well, it's either going to end up like Star Trek or like Star Wars, because I know those two properties so well. Once I started building the planets, I was like, oh my gosh, I already have like this like story. There's this thread from planet to planet. How did these people like start interacting? How did all of this work? It is a really great system for doing your own world planning. And what's great, I realized, is I can use Traveler to make a planet, and then if I want to port that to D&D or something, it makes it great because
Yeah,
I can
true.
use the Traveler system to build the like solar system. But that doesn't mean that I have to have characters going to all the planets. I can just have them be here and be D&D or be Conan system or whatever I want to use as the system.
Regardless, like you roll up the type of government, you roll up the law level, you roll up the what percentage of the planet is water versus this, what's the environment like. That doesn't have to be with spaceships and laser blasters and stuff like that.
Exactly. Well, and what's hilarious is Traveler has like archaic weapons in it.
Yeah, it
So
does.
it's like even if you wanted to run fantasy and Traveler, you almost could do that. The only thing it doesn't have is a magic system. So, which it kind of does with psionics, but that's a whole other thing. But like you can do a lot of really crazy things where you're like, I'm planning this in Traveler and then I'll port it to something else. So it really is a lot of fun. The more that I've learned about this system and have been running it myself, the more ideas that I'm getting for other things on top of it. It's a really great thing to use for that kind of stuff.
That's excellent. So I'm going to put a link to the traveler map so people can, whether you're travelerish or not, you can go poke around it. When you get there, it will be to the zoomed out space that the Third Imperium and the other polities that are in and around it take up. Use your mouse. If you have a scrolling mouse, scroll in, scroll around. It's massive. If you click on any of the planets, it'll pop up a window with information about the planet and links to the Traveler Wiki that has all the information about every single planet, and it's massive and it's really cool. And and I'll as always I'll put a link to Mongoose's site where you can look at some of their like demo materials and things like that. So if you're interested, I think that's terrific. I will look forward to talking about this in the future as you build out the story and, maybe apply this structure for a one-on-one game to other things.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, the transition from something that I built myself into, so I've done Traveler from pre-written to an actual, like, I wrote this, but now going from I wrote this to a pre-written adventure, super smooth. That was something else that surprised me, because sometimes when you're trying to blend those two, it's really hard to do. But because of the way Traveler is done, that you could run into anything anywhere, makes it really easy to be like, well, I'm just going to shift like how they get the job. And then it's just plug and go. And it's the pre-written adventure exactly the way that it was planned. And it's working almost perfectly.
Excellent. Well, I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
That's really great. All right. So we will, I'll see you in a couple of days.
Yes, you will.
That's excellent. Safe travels, smooth travels, and we'll see you in a few days then.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you, as always, for listening to Fluff and Crunch. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel, all through the links in the show notes.